Welcome back to part 2 of our chat with very recently retired Queensland Police Officer John Goobanko. In part 1, we talked about John's life on the beat as a Gold Coast cop. It sounds like a bit of a TV series there, John.
It
Gold
does.
Coast cop.
I can see there being a good TV series one day.
Did you wear Hawaiian shirts?
No.
You sure?
No, I never even wore the Silverwich shirt.
All
I
right.
might have worn short sleeves.
You would have worn the short sleeves. They were all the rage up there.
Occasionally on the odd Silverwich day.
Okay. So in part 2, we're going to talk about a murder investigation that's quite often referred to as a chicken salad roll case. So it's a murder. Chicken salad roll. It's sort of... Yeah, it's a strange one. Do you want to talk to me about that? What were the circumstances of the murder, first of all?
All right, well, I'll sort of take you to I was working Burleigh Head CLB, and I'd gone back to CLB to relieve for a bit to give someone some uniform experience, and I swapped with a detective sergeant for a bit because I still had the skills, and I would spend half my time in uniform and half my time in the CLB in around 2004, 2005, and this was in May 2005. And I'd worked on the weekend. I'd locked someone up on the night before, and I'd finished work at midnight or something, and I had a guy appearing in custody. I needed to go into the station to get some court documents together to make sure I was there, a quote for some damage or something. And I'd gone in to get that, and I'd just gone in a pair of shorts and T-shirt, and I wasn't starting until 2 o'clock. And I was in there, and it was on a Monday morning, and it's about 9:30 or something in the morning, and the senior sergeant said, "What are you doing?" I said, just fix this stuff for court, and I was about to go home and have some breakfast and have a shower and get ready for work a bit later on. And he said, "Looks like we've got a homicide on. Can you help out now?" And I said, "Yeah, I went and got yesterday's clothes on and set the scene." Teresa Piper, a young lady, early 30, bookkeeper at a local Seafire restaurant, which was on the absolute beachfront at Burleigh Heads. And it was a very upmarket sort of a venue. And she was a bookkeeper who would go in on Monday mornings and do the books. She's been found by staff turning up to start work. She's been found deceased in the middle of the restaurant in the kitchen area.
Right.
She got a knife lying on her back with a knife sticking out of her chest. She was obviously deceased. The back door was open, which leads down to the beachfront and to some nearby public toilets. The office door was open. The safe was open. The old VHS video had been taken out of the thing. There was no tape for a limited number of cameras that they had. And there was a chef knife that was there in a chest, and so it looked like a robbery that had gone bad. All the money was missing, the takings, and so there was the investigation was commenced, and anyone starting work was prevented from going in, and they were sent on down to the station. And so I was just asked to help out with these, taking a number of statements from staff.
Yeah.
So I walked out to the meal room, and this guy's just sitting there, and after I'd got changed, and it was the manager, Lydia, and investigations starts. We've got to know everything about the business, and this is the golden opportunity. This guy's the manager.
Good starting point.
Yeah, like who locks up, who knows who's got a key. What was her routine? What's your routine? Who worked last night? How do we know how much money was in the safe? Was there money in the safe? What was there? What was it? All this stuff I need to find out. So I'm going to become the authority on this through a statement with the guy. But I'd started, and I'd only done one page of the statement, I think, at this point in time, before I learned that there'd been another theft from there on a previous occasion some weeks earlier. And so we thought, well, let's cover off on that, because you can't leave stones unturned in these things. And all right, let's give everyone their rights and cautions, and let's talk to the staff, and let's cover off on that previous incident as well while we go through this, because it looked like a random robbery that had gone on. Anyway, so we I start taking a statement off him. I take him into the. I then decide, okay, we'll make it a video. Let's do this statements on video. We can cover a lot of ground quicker on video, and then I'll make the statement up off that afterwards. And so I do a 45-minute tape of VHS in those days that runs out. I take him out the back. He's just a witness. I give him a cup of coffee and he has a smoke, and he's at the back doing that. So I go off and find out some more about the case, what we're learning. Are we learning any more yet? And in between, I give him half hour break or so with a cup of coffee and his smoke, and we come back in and do another tape with him, and again covering off on more detail of running the place
you'd get from a manager.
And then then we have another break, and it's now after lunch, and like, remember I worked last night. I haven't had breakfast. I'm starving. One of the young blokes says he's going down to the scene, but he's going to. He's got to drop something down at the scene, but he's going to come back, and he said, "Does anyone want any lunch?" And I said, "Oh, mate, I'm starving. I haven't eaten breakfast. I ate since 6 o'clock last night." I said, "You go to the bakery?" I said, "I'll just get a chicken salad roll from the bakery." And I said to Lydia, "Lydia, when did you eat last, mate?" And he said, "Oh, it's about 6 o'clock last night." And I said,
and so what time of day was
this? Is midday,
right? The following.
So it's been, he hasn't had breakfast. I haven't had breakfast. So the young bloke's midday. He's going to go down. He's going to come back with lunch. So Lydia goes out and has another smoke and a cup of coffee. I'll give him a can of Coke out of the social club fridge. I'm sort of, they're victims. The workmates are victims. They've lost their workmate, and. So it's we're treating them with compassion and giving them a bit of understanding and giving them breaks, and he's sitting at the back in the barbecue area of the station having a smoke, and anyway I then go and do the third tape. I'm doing another tape, and the young bloke hasn't come back with lunch yet, So anyway, we go and do this other tape, and in that I ask him about how do you get what were your movements last night? What time did you finish? And okay, you turned up to work today. How did you get to work today? And where's your car parked now? And the last thing, just before the tape, the tape's about the old Neil things, and it's about to go beep and
beep. Yep.
Where's your car parked? And can we have a look at it? And then the old tape goes off, and I take him out the back. And I'm letting him have another smoke. And we've had a briefing. We've had this is 2 o'clock's past, and we're having a 2 o'clock briefing with the guys coming on in the afternoon. So I'm leaving him alone for half an hour or so out the back there, and just he's all right. He's got he's entertained himself. And finally, the young bloke comes back with a sandwich, and I've got these 2 chicken salad rolls, and I've walked out and I've tossed him his chicken salad rolls. I said, "Oh mate, sorry it's so late." The guy got tied up. He's gone down. He's gone down 3 hours later. Come back. He got tied up with an inquiry. There's your sandwich, and I've just got mine and woofed it down because it's been 21 hours since I've eaten, and I've just gone. And I look over, and I think I should have had 2, and look over, and here's Lydio. He's smoking again, and he's having a drink of his Coke or coffee or something. And I look down, and he's only had 1 bite out of his chicken salad roll. And I'm like, mate, you can't eat that, can you? And before this, he's looking at me like we're looking at each other now, Gary, But now he can't look at me. He's looking down. He's looking everywhere else. He can't look me in the face. Yeah. No. You
eye contact. Yeah.
You look here.
Yeah.
You can't eat that, can you? And he's like, no, he bows his head and he shakes his head. No, I can't. Do you want to talk about it? Yeah. Yeah, he wants to talk about it. So can I ring my sister first? I said, yeah, of course, but I can't talk to you here. We have to talk inside on tape, So we go inside, and I find the young bloke that's gone to get the chicken salad roll, and then I said, quick, where's Homer, the senior sergeant? Where's he? And he says, he's in, all the big bosses are all down, the chief superintendents and detective superintendents and everyone from the homicide squad, all the big people that come down from Brisbane, they're all out there. They're having putting a big task force together on this. This is going to be a long, protracted investigation. We've got no leads. It looks like a random attack. We've got no video. We've got nothing that we've got nowhere to go with this at this point. We're going to really need to flatten out and broaden our inquiries, and it's going to need a big team, and they're about to have a meeting, and I said, go and get the senior sergeant out of the room, and he's like, oh, no, he's in with all those big bosses. I said, do as you're told, go in there, knock on the door, excuse yourself, and get the detective senior sergeant. I need to see him now. Yeah. This bloke's ready to pop.
Yeah.
And he's like, Ozzy said something. I said, no, but trust me, he's ready to pop. Go and get the detective senior sergeant. We need to flatten out on this guy now. He goes and gets the detective senior sergeant out. He comes and I introduce him to the investigating officer who was there, and the young bloke that was Rob that was getting the sandwich. He was going to be the corroborator on the job. And I said, oh, Lydia, this is Kurt. This is Rob. They're going to talk to you from here on in. And he's like, oh, John, you're going to be there, aren't you? And the detective senior sergeant prodded me in the back. No. John's going to talk to you. He hasn't been to the scene, so Kurt's going to be in there with him now, so that he can help with any questions about the scene.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so he wanted to ring his sister first. So I let him ring his sister first, and then I get in the interview room, and I hadn't realised that in the time that I'd been away in uniform, and before I come back, they'd put this remote monitor in so they could listen to him from another room.
Right. Okay.
And I didn't realise this, but you know when we interview people and we sort of we always take different styles or different things.
Yeah.
I kind of like to just ask them what happened and go with it from there and try to maybe take them through chronologically. Yeah. It was kind of one of my ways I like to do it when it suited.
Yeah.
But with this one, I was worried that the sister's going to ring the lawyer, and the lawyer's going to ring up and go, "Don't interview my client. He's not to talk."
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for this call. So think of it as like a. I think I want to eat all my meat. I'll eat the veggies. Have the veggies later. I want the meat. I want the meat of this.
You want the confession.
So I get in there and I like, okay, do you agree we having a talk at the back and you couldn't eat the sandwich? Yeah. Do you agree? I said, and I gave the conversation, reaffirmed the conversation took place. All right, what can you tell me? Because I killed her.
Yeah.
Why? He said, I took the money from the safe and I went to the casino and I gambled it. I lost, a lot of it, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to replace it.
Yeah.
By the way, it was me last time too. Who stole from the safe. And he said, and I decided that I was going to come back and confess that to her. And I come back in and I was waiting here and I thought, I could make it look like a robbery.
Yeah.
So he said, I waited for her to come in, and she came in and she walked up to me and said, oh, Lydia, what are you doing here? And Lydia said, oh, I've just come in to do some stuff and catch up on some stuff. And she turned to walk into the office and he walked up behind her and he said, I walked up and I stabbed her in the back. And I said, and then he said, but it wouldn't go in. So he said, then I come in over the front and he demonstrated on Rob.
Yeah.
And Rob's still damaged from that experience, I think, because he demonstrated how he brought the knife in slowly through her sternum, which is like gristle, like a cartilage, and it clearly went straight into her heart, and she died straight away, and he laid her on her back. And at this point in time, I've sort of turned around and said, hang on, just stop there for a sec. You're saying she's got a stab wound in the back? And he said, yeah. And I sort of turned to Kurt and I said, look, we're 5 hours into a homicide investigation. I don't think we've disturbed the body yet. I'd say she's probably still lying in situation. And he said, yeah, I've just come from there before. And she's not. They're still working around the outside. In those days, that was the way they did their forensics, and there was going to be some time before they got worked their way into her. And I said, well, there'd only be two people in the world that could know she's got a stab wound in the back, and that's the victim and the person who did it.
Yeah.
Because the investigation's so fresh that we don't even know she's got this extra wound. And the detective senior sergeant, unbeknown to me, the detective senior sergeant's out in the other office with all the big bosses. They're all sitting around watching this interview, and the detective senior sergeant's on the phone ringing the scientist. Have you disturbed the body? Have you touched the body yet? No. Quick. we've got a guy here confessing to killing her.
Yeah.
Roll her over and see if she's got a wound in the back. And they did, and sure enough, she's had a wound in the back, which we didn't know and couldn't know at that point. But
I like that story for a number of reasons, because it shows how experience plays out in criminal investigations. And if I'm reading it right, and that's the first time I've heard you tell me, you're obviously, when you're getting a statement from him, you look at everyone in a murder straight off. Like, you might be thinking, okay, well, they're just working there, but you've always got your eye a little bit open, looking for any time I'm communicating with someone in the early stages of an investigation, from a detective's point of view, you're looking at the person. Is there any subtle things? So the thing that got your interest in that the bloke wasn't eating.
Look, when I was, and these are, that's what I talked to the trainees about there recently. These are skills that you may well already have. These are life experience skills. When I was 10 years old, I was fighting with my brother, who's like 4 years older than me, and I shoved his butt into the TV set and busted a TV like in 1972, and they weren't cheap then, I'll tell you. And there's nothing that kills the appetite like the old mother's words, wait till your father gets home.
That was always a scary saying.
And so the wait till your father gets home really applied there, and it killed the appetite. So there's...
you took your own experience.
And he can't eat. Yeah. He can't eat. And as investigators, we go for the throat of any chink in the armour, like it's a... Well,
John, good investigators do. And I say with homicide, sometimes you have one or two opportunities, and if you don't seize those opportunities, you've lost it, and someone has literally got away with murder. And what you've just relayed, half the people I work with would have done what you did in terms of picking up on something. The other half wouldn't have picked up on it, and that's the difference. That's the difference that can solve major crimes.
God, it's like talking to myself, Gary. I think talking to you.
We've got the same hairstyle.
We had a chief superintendent on the coast at the time, and he was in there, and he was down at the thing, and he a lovely guy. Actually, I met him at didn't meet him through my work. He was swimming with my mate in the Australian police games. I was down in South Australia, ended up down there having a dinner and a drink with him, after the games, and got to know him that way. But he was my boss from the Gold Coast, but I didn't, we didn't go near them, He comes across to me about 2 weeks later. I'm at this send off, and he just a morning tea for someone leaving, one of the office ladies, and he walks across the room. There's about 100 people in the room. And he walks across the room, and he comes up and he shakes my hand. He goes, "Oh, John, that was really, really good work what you did the other day." And I said, "Look, it was good, but it's not brilliant, Like I was brilliant work, look, any detective worth his salt should have picked up on that." And he goes, "Yeah, you're right, but there's a lot that wouldn't have." And and probably sadly, and you just come out and said, "Look, half the guys I work with would have picked it up, and half the guys wouldn't." Yeah. And you and I are probably in that half that would, and that's the... And making progress in difficult investigations is by millimetres. So you got to be hyper alert on what's going on and the people that you're speaking to, and looking for little things. Now, people might say, because people often say, you're a homicide detective, you trust your gut instinct and that. I think the story that you just relayed there, that's the type of thing you're talking about. You got to overlay your instinct with facts. Like you've got to get the evidence to support it, but it points you in a direction. And another interesting thing that I like is that you identified the need to let's go for the meat section of the confession, because you might let him talk. And I've seen people being interviewed, and I've seen them being let off the hook. The crook is sitting there, the suspect is sitting there nervous, and they're about to confess, and then the interviewing officer will say something that just, I think I'm going to get away with this. And then they take off on the direction and deny it. You've got to watch the body language. You've got to be ready for it and know when to ask the question at the right time and the right amount of pressure applied. It's an honour to be able to interview someone for such a serious crime.
100%.
The people that to be trusted to do that, it's a true honour, and you've got to, if you always accept that that honour that it is, you don't want to muck it up, and you do seize on the opportunities. People tell you stuff without telling you stuff.
Yeah.
And that's one of my lessons that I delivered to the young fellows up at the academy too. You know, they come from this. You know, like communicate with your partner, tell them what you saw, tell them what you're thinking, and this is, you know, brief up, tell your bosses what you think. You know, don't your opinion counts, and I try and teach them this about investigation of domestic violence now. You know, it's a very good application to that. You know, the people tell you when you go to a domestic violence incident and the aggrieved doesn't want to disclose or tell you something, she tells you stuff by sitting there and just not even saying anything when she can't look at him, you know, or you know, there's some thing like that. Everything's okay, but you haven't looked at your spouse.
So the words coming out of your mouth don't correlate with what your body's telling us. The thing about investigations too, and interviews, because interviews, I love that part of policing. That was my happy place in the interview room. I thought that was to me, that was my sharp end of policing, because you prepare for it. You could walk out and you've actually got someone for a murder, or someone's got away with a murder. But you talked about another thing that I strongly agree with. Everyone's got their own style. And you talked about your young days as a detective, and you had your typing skills, so everyone was grabbing hold of you and learning from the different people. You can't copy someone else's interview style. You've got to do something that sits well with you. And I say this to detectives as well. You've got to have your own style. So you take what's good from other investigators, and I like the way that person approached it, or she did this or that, but you've got to have your own style, so when you're in there you're comfortable. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. And like, the interview for me is like the holy grail. You just touched on that. Like, it's the holy grail. I want a, you know, confession, or alternatively, lies are as good sometimes. Lies are as good sometimes, but it's you know, I always you know, like you say, pick up some bit. You take a bit of this person, a bit of that person, and you know, you become a bit of a mosaic of the people you've worked with previously, and you take the good bits and you take the bad bits. And there's some bad bits. Sometimes people get tunnel vision. They think rather than taking them where they go following the lead where it takes you, they try, so-and-so's right for this, and try to make it
it's interesting, and because you see some people that prepare for interviews, but it goes off on a different tangent, and they're not prepared to go with that tangent because they've got their structure that they want to keep, and that they miss opportunities there. The thing about interviewing as well, and this is what people have got to understand, because they listen to two old idiots like us talking about how passionate they are and we're going to get a confession, but it also helps eliminate people if you do a proper interview.
Yes.
Because quite often people, I did a lot of unsolved work, like looking back at unsolved homicides. And when people hadn't been interviewed thoroughly, you couldn't make a determination. But if you do a thorough interview, you can actually help the person you're sitting opposite, because you give them the opportunity to show why they haven't done it. So that's another side of it.
Yeah, it's like an investigation is a search for the truth. But one of the things, let's say that sister would have called a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I've told the young bloke, go out and get the detectives thing to say, we need to flatten out on this guy. Even if he wouldn't have confessed at that point, we know to flatten out on him.
Yeah.
Now I'd already, like you said before, you're always making the inquiries. I'm former officer in charge of the casino crime squad. I'd already gone to the intel check and said, just run this guy. I'm doing a check. Run this guy through. I want to patron check it through the casino. See if he is a gambler. Because, as you know, half the time, with the previous theft from the safe, always, whenever there's a theft from a place of work, often it's either drugs or gambling.
Yeah,
someone gambling, or it's sometimes I've put it quite crudely with some of the bosses, some of the boss at a place, someone's been stealing the money. Yeah, well, what about your bookkeeper, or I might ask at a business, what about her, or what about the office girl doing the rent roll, for instance, and it's like, oh no, she's been with us for years. I think, who's fucking her?
yeah, okay.
And often you'll find a new boyfriend. Oh, she's got a new boyfriend. Yeah, she's got a new boyfriend with a drug habit, and he's saying, and they'll be stealing from there. Well, so often the game. So I was already running him through the casino, and the Intel chick had come back and said, "Oh, we can't get on to anyone there." I thought, well, I've got my contacts, so I've one of those breaks. I was already running him through.
Yeah,
I've already rung someone. I'll contact the Office of Game Regulation. I need this.
Yeah.
So if we hadn't got that confession, we would have picked up on the fact that he's gone in there and put $4,500 over the table. There was like $9,000 missing, and $4,500 had gone over the table. I can tell you, we could tell you in the casino every cent you spent.
Another thing that worked to your benefit is keeping him close. Get a little bit of humanity, get him a sandwich. Yeah, you could have been this arrogant detective that I'm too busy to talk to you. Yeah, but you showed him humanity, and it's interesting that he asked for you in the interview room. And
that's the other thing I was to teach the trainees. It's rapport.
Yeah,
you build that rapport, and we were taught, it's you just learn to.
And maybe we're touching on, because you mentioned in part one about, well, we didn't have CCTV footage and all that, and that's sort of old school detective, isn't it? You need that rapport. You need that connection with the witness or the victim or the offenders to get that information that you require.
Oh, it's a skill, interviewing people and extracting from them as much as we do. You're doing it with me. Like you've extracted from me probably a little bit more than I was going to tell you today.
I'd love to put us in an interview room going after the bad guy. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we'd run off each other, all right, I reckon.
Yeah. Now, there's another case I want to talk about, and this is the extortion at the tattoo business. I like this for a number of reasons. I like it because it just shows innovative policing, and I like to see sometimes the bad guys come unstuck in what's almost an embarrassing way. So could you tell us about that? I think it was 2005 Miami.
Look, there was had this Brazilian guy had just immigrated to Australia. And he was an artist, and he was a tattoo artist, and he wanted to set up his own business. And he set up his own business down at Miami, and he opens up on a Wednesday, and he's got his little sign he puts out the front, a little triangle sign, and Satisfaction Art Tattoo, and he puts it out the front there. And he's come Thursday morning, these 4 bikey-looking fellas turn up and tell him that he hasn't asked for permission to open up. So he comes down, he goes up to the Broadbeach police station, he sees a young guy at the counter there, and he says, I don't know what we can do for you, maybe you better go and talk to the detectives at Burleigh. And he goes down to Burleigh, and he's talking to a young uniformed guy on the desk, and he said, I don't know what we can do. And I'm just walking past, I said, what? Because my office was nearby. Yeah. And I was, back there relieving for a bit, and I said, what's your problem? And he said, told me what that little bit there, and I said, come in the office. And so I bring him in the office with me, and I said, so you've opened the business, and they've told you got to close. Yeah, they said I can go out to Mudgeerbar or somewhere. I can't be at Miami because they've got a shop up the road.
So it's basically bouncing him.
It's their territory.
Yeah. And
he hasn't asked for permission to be there. And I said, really? And I said, is your shop shut now? He said, oh, yeah, they told me I had to shut now. And I said, oh, well, let's leave it closed tomorrow. Let's have a grand opening on Monday. And he's like, oh, okay. I said, do they know what your staff look like? He said, no, I was there on my own. I said, I'll give you some staff. So we organised, and I was really lucky.
Yeah.
I was really lucky to work with people I worked with, and to get that. Get the trust from the bosses to let me have a bit of room to move on this like this.
Do something innovative with a little bit of risk attached.
Look, I was only a detective sergeant, and I wasn't, I was making decisions that probably need to be made higher than this, but it's like, then I took it to the detective senior sergeant, he took the detective inspector, and it was like, and we got on to major crime up in Brisbane and said, oh, can you help us out? Because they get surveillance.
Yeah.
lot easier than me. And they just we invited them to the
Party.
CIB surprise party.
Yeah.
And and it was really good because the bosses up in Brisbane said, "Oh no, let Goob run it. It's we'll be there, but anyone else would have we've got to take over this. You know what they're like.
Yeah.
The big people uptown.
Yep.
And but they let me run it, and so I organised some staff there and
outline your cunning plan.
And we had we said we'll have a grand opening on Monday.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that they know we're open for business.
Yeah, put some flyers out.
And like, I always reckon never underestimate the ability of the crooks to play their part in these scenarios.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they must have got the script. They knew what their part was, and that was to turn up there within, as one of the guys said, he said, "Oh, if this was like the bill, they'd have to put in ads, because there was within about 40 minutes of
the grand opening
grand opening, they've rocked Monday. Up and they've turned up and they bring down the bum bag with the pistol and there's four grubs turn up and there was they turned up in 2 cars and I'd actually known one of these guys and one of the guys I actually knew his father and his mother and there was. His father used to have the service station not far from the old Broadbeach station when I was a young constable. I've known him for years. I'd driven this guy around the car when he was like 12, 2 years, 3 years old, taking him for a ride in the police car.
Yeah.
And he was behind it. And but I declared to the other guys, I might know this guy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't interfere because here's the thing: I've always been a police officer in the area.
Yeah.
He knows that. If he's chosen to become a crook in my area, then he falls foul of me.
Yeah.
And
no favours.
Yeah, no. It's like that's we live and work in a community.
Yeah.
Sometimes people drop off. Some kids don't follow their parents' footsteps, I suppose. And
so you had how many UCs in the?
So I had a guy getting a tattoo.
You were getting the tattoo?
No, I had a guy getting a tattoo.
Right.
No,
okay.
I used all Brisbane people because I didn't want any of these guys identifying us. So I brought Brisbane people down to be inside the place, and I had me and all my guys about 1 kilometre away.
Yeah.
And we waited for them to turn up, and
so they turn up, and I just love the scenario. So they're turning up to bounce this bloke for not abiding by their directions, which was to shut down.
And then out comes they walk in and they push the counter over.
Yeah.
And they say, "Which part of get out of town didn't you understand?"
Beautiful. Yep.
And
good evidence.
And he got pushed out the back door. I had a couple of people over the back. Took him away to safety.
Yeah.
And then it's like there was left 3 or 4 in there, the 3 of our people in there. And the rest of us were coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were coming. We knew they were coming. And one of them ran away. They always say that. There's always one that runs away.
Yeah.
One runs away, and the other 3 got cleaned up. And I'll never forget. I'm standing with my foot in the back of this guy, and while he's being held down the ground, and along with my phone rings, I answered that John Goobanko, and he nearly snapped his neck around because he.
Oh, then he realised
it was. He realised whose foot it was in the middle of his back.
Yeah.
And it's and it's funny because a friend of mine sometime afterwards that said, she saw him and he said, I'm going to kill Goobanko, blah, blah, blah. And she said she didn't want to tell me about it. She said, I don't want to tell you about. I was at a party, I was at a barbecue the other day, and he said he was going to kill you. And I said, I just smiled. He was not going to kill me. He said, he knows where I live. He's never been around. And I said, he's just telling you that this buddy to be
pump his weight
up with you. I said, if he was to hurt me, he'd be in trouble with his mum and his dad and his sister and brother. And he was the one making the poor choices. It's not like I've come along and been playing policeman around him. I was always a policeman.
Yeah.
If he chooses to offend in my area, he knows what I'm capable of. And
that's a fair way of looking at it too. Like we're on the podcast speaking to a lot of people that have been on the other side of the law, and okay, they're living by their code. and police are doing what we do with our code. It's not personal in that regards, but yeah, you got a bloke that's just trying to start a business and getting stood over, and it happens a lot. Like I remember early days in my career where someone opened a tattoo parlor. They were just artists. They didn't have no idea about the bikie world or whatever. And this poor bloke, he's all excited, starting his first business, set it up, and these goons turn up and if you don't shut down, we're cutting your ears off and we're mailing to your mum. And I thought I don't know why it just sort of that threat just. And he said, look, he came to us and we said we could do this, do that, and he said, no, I'm out of here. I don't want to be involved in this. And yeah, he was just trying to make a living.
Well, this guy, we sort of, sort of basically took him under our wing then just to keep an eye and make sure that nothing happened to him after that. And he went on to run a successful business. So he should.
You've all got tattoos, satisfaction art on your back.
I was going to go and get a yin yang after you.
But they're like there's stories like that, and that's why you got to love policing, isn't it? Like little things like that. Like it's exciting.
Oh, look, one of the young blokes says, "Oh, I love working on your job, Scoob." You know, like because that's not the only one. And you know, there's others, you know, along the track, you know, that I've sort of been involved in the little stings. Like obviously, for me to put together in 3 days a little sting like that,
yeah,
you know, it wasn't my first,
yeah,
and I just don't think we just don't. There's no rule book for that.
There is no rule book, and you're not breaking any rules by it. It's innovative policing.
You're just recreating the situation that's going to occur when some little girl turns up at our shop and asks for a tattoo of a bluebird on her ass cheek, and then goes and they say, "Oh, we'll do it for $100," and then she goes up to the next shop and they say, "Oh, we'll do it for $125," and she'll still say, "Oh, no, I'll get it done down the road. They're doing it for $100."
Yeah, yeah.
And who's there to protect him then?
Yeah.
So we're just recreating that to provide, you know, again, everyone's got a right to feel safe. This guy's got a right to come here. He pays his taxes. You know, as I said, like, you know, what is it next? The baker shop? The bikies want to run bakers, or you know, like hairdressers? They want what do they? Who do they think they are to run around and be bullies?
That's the beauty of being police, and I think, and it certainly comes across in my discussions with you, but I've had a lot of people say the same thing. You're looking after people. Yeah, that's what policing is about.
People pay their taxes. You know, there's you think of a tattoo shop. They've got all these health regulations. They've got to pay. They've got to go to the Gold Coast, you know, the Gold Coast City Council and ask for a permit to operate a business. The health department's going to make sure their needles are clean and all these other rules and regulations. They employ too many people. They've got to pay payroll tax, that sort of thing. They pay tax on their earnings to the Australian government. They've already paid all their money for their protection, and that's paid for by the police that keep them.
They don't have to pay extra.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to take us, and I'm worried. I've got a thing again in the research preparation before the interview, but the John Goobanko meningococcal theory of policing. Dare I ask, what the hell's that about?
Look,
so just repeat it again. So
it's the John Goobanko meningococcal theory of police. You know why I call it the John Goobanko meningococcal theory of police? Because one day I hope that some big boss is going to ask some smaller boss who's advocating to centralise. And I asked, well, how does this fit in with the John Goobanko meningococcal theory of policing? And they'll go, oh, fucking Goobanko.
Okay, so this is your leaving your legacy, literally.
Oh, look, you know, when I started
is it a peer-reviewed paper that the theory?
No, but I do believe that a doctor of business one day might write a academic paper about this.
Okay, that'll be. I'll look out for that.
And then it'll be something you could be able to use in your police exams and things and assignments and stuff. You'll be able to refer to the academic paper about it. But
all right, talk us through it.
Right. So when I started in 1981, I worked at Broadbeach Mobile Patrols, and we worked out of everyone started and finished work at Broadbeach, and we worked. We didn't have a crew starting at Coolangatta. We didn't have a crew starting at Southport. We started at Broadbeach and we did all the mobile patrols from there. Yeah. And then in that was good, but like had its advantages, but the disadvantages. And I take you back to when I worked at Burleigh. when I went to work at Burleigh, that became our patch. Before that, I didn't like going out back of Burleigh. It was, taking responsibility.
Yeah.
There was a person. There was an old rough old woman out there in this particular area that.
Is this the oyster knife?
Yeah, she used to get this oyster knife, and she was formerly from the western suburbs of Sydney, and I've come across this one other time about where they use this oyster knife, and the reason they have use an oyster knife because it's got the hilt on it. It's only got about maybe 4 or 5 centimeter blade,
yeah,
and they're usually blunt, but they sharpen them up and they stick it like in the buttocks or in the and sometimes she got real wild and gave someone one near the ribs, but it didn't go in and hit any bad organs,
vital,
and it hurt. It hurt him, and there was anyway. Back in the 80s, instead of calling the police in the early 80s, someone would be domestic violence out in this bloody housing commission estate out the back of Burleigh, and people weren't ringing the police. They'd ring this woman, and she'd come around and stab your husband for you.
So just
and so there's all these guys, the wife bashers weren't getting dealt with by the police. They were walking around with an extra hole in their buttocks from an oyster knife.
I don't know why people think of Queensland as a strange place, but so
she got it from western suburbs of Sydney. I'll tell you.
Okay, we exported.
She went there back with some.
But so this was literally a community that and domestic violence. I would imagine would be fairly prevalent there. And instead of going to the cops, they went and saw this lady.
And she came around.
Inflict.
Look, I'm not saying everyone in the community, but there were. I heard anecdotal stories of I know that I might cut that name out. Yeah, that she'd gone around.
We'll call her the oyster lady. Would go around and stab people in the buttocks that were doomed to be.
Yeah. Anyway, she's passed now. Anyway, but she used to go around and liven up. She'd lay out the husband. She was a tough old bugger from the western suburbs of Sydney, and she's brought her old skills up there, and she ruled the roost out there. Went amongst the people out there. But okay, we went to Burleigh and we started to take control out there, and don't ring her, ring us.
And this, what we're talking about here is like the police stations, and New South Wales went through this. We'd create super stations instead of having the local stations where local police knew the local characters, knew the local offenders, everyone knew the cops, and the cops knew the community. Then they've formed, this is down New South Wales, they've closed down those smaller stations, made them into bigger stations, and saying that it's more economical to do it this way and we'll still provide the same service. Your meningococcal theory is that doesn't work.
Look, there's prices to be paid for these things, and there's local police are local, centralised police are not.
Yeah, and
there are some economies of scale, I suppose, where they've got savings by having all their pools, their resources in the one place. Maybe they haven't got a smaller station. You might have a car sitting there idle for 3 or 4 hours, whereas in a bigger station, maybe it'll be getting used or something like that. Is the argument, and you only need one building. You don't need 3 buildings and all this sort of thing. You've got 1 counter, not 3 counters, I suppose, is some of the arguments toward it. But geography and ownership, there's people take time to go from the central area, those central places that you talked about in New South Wales where they've centralised, to get to the extremes. There's the tyranny of distance. It's geography. You can't beat geography and ownership in policing. They are really good things. And you come back to some of those stories I've told you. They go back to when got the gun off the street for that back in the first discussion. Knowing where to start
because
in the first place. Because
the community.
I knew who to go and ask. I knew who will know about this because I've worked there. I didn't know that when I was working at Broadbeach at doing mobile patrols for the whole sort of out of the whole Gold Coast. Yeah. Until I had that little thing. It's like a dormitory. You think of a kid with a 20 kids in a dormitory, and the room will be a sort of mess. If you put them in a dormitory and tell them you look after that. You put them in. You give them their own room, 20 rooms. You look after that room. You look after that room. You got a better chance of them having 20 rooms.
Yeah.
they take responsibility, they take ownership, and we took ownership of Burleigh, and it was, I sort of noticed that, that was my sort of early experience of our geography and ownership really sort of kick in. I didn't have that ownership of Burleigh Heads before, but now that was a smaller area that I could be responsible for. You offended in that area. That was my patch, and I knew who was in my patch, and I knew my area. It's like it's my beat. It's my spot.
And what you're talking about, I don't know if it's readily measured, something that could be measured or is tangible, but I know what you're saying is the reality of policing. If you've got police in a local area, they know the local crooks. When I got called to a homicide anywhere in New South Wales, if you had a local police station, the first place we start making inquiries is the local police station, and invariably the locals will point us in the right direction because they know the community. And I don't think you can undervalue the benefits of that type of policing.
And the reason I talk about the meningococcal thing, you come back to the meningococcal disease. When you get someone who gets meningococcal, there's the body's fighting the infection, or it can be another type of viral infection where the organs, the body protects the center, the organs and the main body, and you see in some of these infections where the fingers and the tips and the toes are the first to sort of go, and then feet and hands, and then the extremities suffer, and the body says, well, we've got to look, we're not going to survive without looking after the liver and the heart. So the science of the body says, I can do without toes and fingers, I can't do without the organs. So the first thing that gets starved of resources is the fingers and the tips, and the fingers and the toes. So you don't want to be at the extremity of that sort of area. That's because the officers they've got to drive. You got to drive out there to start work. So you go to work. It's like you get to work. You got to check your emails. You got to check things. So they check it in the central sort of spot. Then they've got to hop in their car and they got to drive down to there, and the boss might say, "No, get out of the station. I mean, you're supposed to be down. You're supposed to be at that extremity." They'll be out there, but they know they've got to get back through all the traffic. Yeah, it might be school traffic, it might be bad times thing, and they've got to get back through that to knock off. They don't want to be stuck out at the extremity when it's close to knock off time. Yeah, and then you get the problem. You go, but we'll have cover cars, that sort of thing. But there's a natural thing that people may well, patrol to make sure that they're closer back toward. They're not going to be stuck right out there and have to get past this school and that school and that school to get back to the station to knock off.
So this is an understanding from a person that's worked 41 years in an organisation, understanding the people and the realities, and you can dress it up and hide it, but these are the perhaps the failings of human nature, but it's human nature in an organisation. And
we're human beings. I'll never forget there was when we were about to have this big review going on, and then when I was in the detectives, and we had like Coolangatta CLB and Burleigh CLB and Southport CLB, all these different things, and then along come these bosses from Brisbane, and they said, "Oh, we can talk frankly. We talk frank, and we're thinking about restructuring and blah blah blah." And I said, look, I was just ready to leave the CLB at the time. I was trying to go to uniform. I said, just give me a uniform and let's go. And this is in the late 90s, and they said, "Oh no, we value your opinion and you talk freely." I said, "All right, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with the structure you've got, and but you're going to try and put us all, put all the officers in one, a southern investigative group and a northern investigative group," and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, that'll pool the resources, blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, a lot of my information, as a Coolangatta detective, would come from the Coolangatta meal room, that breaking in offender we talked about, stealing from all the ladies at the yard. That was from having lunch with one of the uniform guys in the station, and they said, "Oh, I think this guy's up to no good." Yeah. And I got this information. That was just having a sandwich with him, and oh, okay, I'll come give you a hand. And it's that sort of thing. You take that anyway. They said, "Oh no, they'll start at Burleigh, and there'll be the Coolangatta team, and they'll drive down to Coolangatta and they'll attend briefings down there and that sort of thing." I thought, "Are you kidding?" Yeah. And I said, I'll never forget, there was an acting senior sergeant, acting inspector, and acting superintendent there, and I said, Look at you. You're all actors. But none of you got the guts to go back up to Brisbane and say everything's fine down here. You want to become substantive of your rank. So you're going to have to go up to, look what I changed. Look what I changed. Look what I changed. And so they went and changed all this. Fast forward about 15 years, it's all sent it back out again.
Yeah.
They've gone back to the local offices because it works.
Yeah.
And there is some centralisation, but there's also they've gone back to having a component in the outer extremes because people turn up to work and they work. If they work out of that office, they've got their thing around there. You're not paying for their travel time.
Yeah. And the ownership you have in it. But you're talking truth. That's why I haven't interrupted you. And I certainly agree with what you're saying. And hopefully people that do make the decisions, those above will understand that that's the reality of it. You can dress it up as much as you want and say, look, it's fiscally responsible to do this and do that. But when the public... I think that's where public servants as cops and how do we best serve the public, and the public like their local police station open and like to be able to go there and speak to Sergeant Brown or whoever and go, yeah, this is a problem.
Gary, it's a people business. It's a common sense job. It's a people business, and you're managing people. We don't make stuff to sell or anything.
Yeah.
It's
and we're not trying to run at a profit. Yeah, it's servicing the public.
Yeah, and I do get people have got budgets and things like that, and they've got to try and work out how much they're going to spend on that building or whatever. Yep. But the thing is that you can't take geography and ownership out of policing. You can't take the personal thing out of it. You can't take common sense out of it. It's going to be the same in 10, 20, 30 years' time.
Well,
that it's still going to be a common sense job.
Yeah.
You're still going to need people to be brave and step up and have a go. And you're still going to have people to take some ownership, and you're still going to have people that you can't be an hour away from everything.
No. Well, I'm going to look forward to the meningococcal theory of policing paper after it's been published, peer-reviewed and published. So I'll look out for it and I'll say, I know where that came from. What's for you now in retirement?
Look, Gary, we've touched on a few stories. I've got lots of stories to be told, and my dad said to me back in the 80s, you should keep some notes and write a book one day. Well, I've got a really good memory.
Funny you should say that, because I just think the stories and just spending time with you, there's hundreds of stories there.
Gary, I've got a really good story. That's a couple of really good stories that I want to put together in a book, and I haven't touched on them today here. They are really good, and they are going to be a good read. And I'd like to think that they'd make a good mini-series down the track. Good.
I definitely can see you in a Hawaiian shirt. You got it. If it's a Gold Coast cop.
I know. My wife said to me, "Oh well, if someone's going to play you, John, who would that be?" I said, "I don't know, but he'd be fucking good looking."
That goes without saying. And for those that haven't, it's a audio, but there will be a video coming out and you'll see what John's talking about. I don't know if there's an actor out there that can capture you. But look, John, it's been great sitting down having a chat. I really enjoy speaking to what I call a real cop, a true detective, and I know the way you think and we speak the same language, so it's good. One last question. Would you do it all again? Would you recommend people to join the cops?
Oh, look, I'd do it all. Maybe I should have been an F-111 pilot. But other than that...
I wanted to be an astronaut, John, where sometimes you aim too high.
Maths were pretty good. I probably could have joined it, but honestly, I joined the best job ever. You didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
You didn't want to go home from work. You're having too much fun when you were in the 80s anyway. If you went home, you'd miss out on something. You'd miss out on a bank robbery or something. And you'd miss out on a car chase. It was a great job to join. And I know I wouldn't change a thing, but times change. And now I'm looking forward to writing a book, and I'd love to share that with you one day.
Yeah.
And
Well, I reckon we might get you back on. So yeah,
I'd love to. I'd love to come back and talk with you about that when that comes about. And I can see someone want to make a TV miniseries on that one. So I really,
you got the location, you got the stories.
Oh, it's dynamic.
Yeah.
And that's these particular stories. They've got everything in it.
Well, all stuff aside, John, thank you for coming on, and with all seriousness, thank you for coming on the podcast, but also for your service to the community and the work you've done up there. And I saw by your retirement how the community felt about you, so well done.
No, thank you, Gary. I really appreciate that.
Cheers.
Thank you.